thanks to Miss Lori Matson, who is the teacher, believes in my idea to speak to you, to a class like this, with my little voice and my accent, and you will understand because the story is very important. My hope is in you, all of you, who are here and sees an old lady who was exactly the same age when it all happened, the history. I prefer to speak to sophomores, juniors, and seniors, about 3 years when it all happened to me. You are close to me and you believe what I will say. There is only one solution against hatred of what's going on. They still didn't learn from our example. It's one solution, not the arms, is education. To educate yourself and what your teachers give you, believe them, and believe that it is possible to coexist, to be always involved. Don't be indifferent when people suffer. Don't be indifferent when you see that two kids are fighting outside. If you are too short to cope with them, get one nice teacher and helps you to why do they fight. So let me tell you my story. I was 13 years old when Hitler's war was around Romania. I was born in Romania, Transylvania, and I let you smile now. Nobody smiles? Transylvania? Okay, tell me. Dracula, no? Dracula. I am his niece. They don't believe it, but I want you to smile now because there is no more place to smile. So, Transylvania was liked by all the neighborhood countries. Czechoslovakia, Habsburg, Germany, Hungary, and so on. Nice county, full of mountains, rivers, what you prefer. Everybody wanted to have Transylvania. My small family, my father, my mother, my brother, and I lived in a small town. But my father had 11 siblings. My mother had 4 brothers. They had children. I had grandmothers. Everybody was taken to Auschwitz in 1944, when I was already 16 years old, 17. We didn't know what will happen to us. We only knew that instead of Romania, from now on, Hungary will be, because Hungary was the first ally who was Hitler's ally in the big war. So with a signature, Hitler gave the whole Transylvania to Hungarians because they were their allies. That was nothing for us. But when this happened in September of 1940, we didn't know that we won't have school. That was number one that Hitler allowed to Hungary, no more schools for Jewish children. I know that sometimes you don't like the school and you say, oh, Mom, I want to stay home now. I don't want to test now. I want to stay home. And Mom agrees. That's one day. But when you have every day no school, no teaching, no friends. My Christian friends used to ask me, where is Clara? We used to go together, work like you do. And there was no school for us. Well, one day a famous mathematician, Jewish, who said, this is impossible. The kids are on the streets. We can't do that. He went to the ministerium. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Please let me know if you don't hear me. It's soft, it's an accent, so I want you to hear every word. So he, with a Christian priest, decided to go to the ministerium, to the State Department, and beg for a school in Transylvania for Jewish kids. Based on his merits, he got not a school like this, a very dilapidated building for 1,200 students in Transylvania. We were girls separated, boys. We met in the breaks, but it was finally something where we could study. And the teachers were good. They were kicked out from their positions, college or high school, and Jewish kids, Jewish teachers, and they tried to give us the best of them because we were kids who needed to be educated. This school existed for 3.5 years. The first time when I went home, because it was only in one place, the school, and I stayed with my aunt in another, in the town where the school was. I went home, my father asked me, Clara, what do you learn in that school? They paid for the school, so they want to find out what do we get, what education do we get. So I said, we have science, we have geography, history, we have languages. He stopped me, and he said, Clara, what kind of languages do you learn? Well, we had Romanian, it was Romania, Hungarian, German was a must, Hebrew, because it was a Hebrew school. What did I leave out? Latin. And he stopped me. He said, where is English? I was 13 years old that time. I said, I don't know, maybe they don't have an English teacher. My father said, I don't care. You go back to your principal and tell him that you want to learn English. You know, in those times, the children obeyed to their parents. And I had to go. Never mind, I was 13 years old. Have an audience with the principal, and he listened to me. I said, "Listen, my father wants me to learn English because he has family in the United States, and who is going to talk to them after the war? I don't speak English. She has to speak English." I followed what my father said, and the principal said, "You know what? I will try. Maybe the German teacher has possibility to teach English because she speaks English." Sure enough, her secondary certificate of teaching was in English. I was the only one who asked for it. At 3 o'clock already, 30 other students signed up for extra help in the afternoon, 3 times a week, English class. So if my English is not so good as yours, that's where it started. Never mind that I had 4 years of college later on in Transylvania, but this is where it started. So this was in 1940. By 1944, March, they said, never mind, no more school. Jewish school, private school, nothing. Go home and we'll see what happens. We went home. We had to wear yellow star. My Christian friends would ask me, "Clara, why do you need that? We know all." They didn't understand that they wanted to isolate us like leprous people and not let us talk to each other. You'll find out later how much do I owe to those girls and boys who were my age, and they did not understand why I was separated from them, where I was later. Anyway, we waited for another order. The next order was to take us to a ghetto, to isolate us completely from the population. Did you ever hear the word ghetto? Would you tell me where it is? What did you know about it? an isolated place. In our case, it's a brick factory where we were taken. 10,000 people in one place of the brick factory. The bricks were taken out, and it was a huge, almost like this, where they prepared the bricks. Not that time. That time we were only 10,000 people. I have to tell you this sad story. The problem was that for 10,000 people, there was no bathroom, restroom, anywhere. We had to go outside, bushes, don't ask. The reason why I tell you the story is that they had to do something about it. So they made a big meeting in the brick factory, and they chose 6 tall boys. I don't see you standing, but I could find here 6, we were already 16, 17 years old, 6 boys who will dig latrines for 10,000 people. What is a latrine? It's a ditch, 1 yard wide, 1 yard deep. And we would sit on the edge of the ditch and do number 1 and number 2 in front of everybody. My boyfriend, I had a boyfriend, 16, you might have one. And he was chosen for this task. But he was a very strong guy, and he said, I refuse to do this work. This is humiliating, this is terrible, this is anti-hygiene. And he made a speech. The guard looked at him. Why does he talk? Why does he rebel? So he looked at him and he said, those 2 men will show you how could you have your way and not our way. They chose my father from the big crowd and another man, and they hanged my boyfriend to a tree, his feet hardly reaching the ground, and they pulled him up. And I was watching this scene. When he couldn't help, he didn't die. He just fainted. They cut him off, and they told him, this and more will be done with you if anybody here refuses any order of Germans or Hungarian guards, already Hungarian guards. So bear this in your mind. This boy was completely out of his world. He was sad, he was depressed. Maybe at the end I will tell you what happened to him. So this was an example in our life in the ghetto. Pretty soon, 4 weeks later, we saw cattle cars on the railway where the bricks were taken out or in. We didn't think it was for us, but it was for us. 70 people in one wagon, 2 little windows in the cattle car. My father could reach it, but nobody else could. He was a tall guy. What happened later, the kids were crying, we are hungry, we are thirsty. It was terrible, but I think it was nothing compared to what happened later. Because after 3 days, we stopped. Anybody read the Night, Elie Wiesel? Wow, I'm glad. You know, Elie Wiesel is a friend of mine. I have his picture here to show you. So I knew that it is taught night. He was in the same region with me. So after arriving to Auschwitz, we didn't know what was that. It was a concentration camp and an extermination camp. Millions went by. Those who could work, they were selected for work. Those who couldn't, they went somewhere else that we didn't know where. Old people went to the left, were selected, the young people to the right. Of course, from our wagon, where we were 70, there were girls and boys, 15, 16, 17, who were put to work. Those who were above it or had a little child, a young mother, to the left. My mother, by sheer accident, she was chosen to the right. She was 44 years old, but she didn't look it. And she was the only one among girls and boys on the other side who was selected to live. I didn't know that, but it happened that by sheer luck, she was the only one from our train who was selected to work. 8 days in Auschwitz. First of all, they took us in a barrack. I had a hair like this young lady there, that long. It was shaved like my forehead, which wasn't bad because later on people had lice if they had, and that lice they carried away and they got some kind of virus. So they anticipated this and they shaved us completely. When I went back to the group, my mother said, "Where is my child?" She couldn't recognize me without that hair that long. That's so fashionable now. This was the first night in Auschwitz. We had to undress, stand in front of selectors again. Those who are strong enough, they got one dress, girls, one dress. No panties, no bras, nothing, just one dress. They couldn't take away our shoes because that's a size. It was impossible. So I had my shoes that my father's made. He was a shoemaker. And I got that shoe. I came back with that shoe. It was a rarity. So we went to a barrack again on the floor. 11-month kids. I was sleeping on the floor. I feel it now. Arthritic pain all over my body. But that was the way. They didn't have too much housing for us, but they had a lot of work for us. And we slept on the floor. We also had a blanket that served later as a coat and a cover for our bed. It's unbelievable. You can't say, that's why I'm coming. That's why my duty is to talk to you, to believe that you saw an old lady telling you the truth, and you won't let happen again, the worst genocide of mankind. So let's go on. What did we work? The first time we were selected, they looked at my legs and hands. What can we do? It's standing hours in finding us what could we help to Hitler's war. Where about 1,000 women, we were taken to, I don't have a map, in Latvia, Riga was a gunpowder factory. And we were chosen, 1,000 people, to go there by train, this time not a cattle train, a regular train, to Riga to work and recycle batteries, the big batteries that we have also. We had to cut it in half and take out that is a mushy stuff that became next day gunpowder. So our work was very important. Every night at 6 o'clock till next day, 6 o'clock, we went to a factory, like a classroom of yours. We had benches where we had the prepared batteries, and we had to work till next day, 6 o'clock. It was hard for a child, 16 years old and 17 years old, to keep her or his eyes open. It was impossible. And when 12 o'clock came, everybody's head fell on the desk and we couldn't work. And I have to stop here. that an old German worker who was our supervisor, he had to find a solution to keep us awake and in the same time produce. For 1 week we were beaten up every night to wake up to start to work. It was terrible. One night he says to me, "You little girl, you speak German. Can you sing German?" And I said, "Yeah, I can sing because my father was a singer, a frustrated singer, but he had to be a shoemaker instead." But he taught us 2 Italian songs in Italian, 2 German songs in German. 5, 6 languages. He told me, "You have to speak in the original language that was written." So I said, "I know a lullaby by Schubert, and I know a love song by Lehar." We didn't need a lullaby, to sing, because we could sleep very well. But he said, "But you have to sing when it's darker outside, to have to sing your love song and see what happens." Believe it or not, the 60 women who were in the place, they sang along. They didn't know the text, but they sang along with me. They learned how to sing and produce. This was a German who did that to us. He wanted to produce, but the way not to beat us every night, he chose another one. This lasted 3 months. I don't want to talk about food, that nothing was good, but we survived. After 3 months, a guy who took care of the machines came to me and he said, "Watch out, your mother is very pale. She cannot, there will be a selection again tomorrow. I saw a ship on the sea that will take you somewhere. So try to stick together." And that saved my life. He brought a little rouge on her face to put and to try to make her younger looking. And he found some kind of scarf and gave it to me to put on my mom's head. She was bored like everybody else. And we were selected next day. And again, my mother was selected, even though the guy who made the selection said, "How old are you?" My mother said, 39. She was 44. The guy yelled at her, "You don't want to win the war for Hitler? You don't want to work for us? You are not even 32. Go back to your row." I knew that my mom was saved again. She and I together made a team that I will never forget. Now let me tell you other things. So we went a little on the ocean, not ocean, it's the Baltic Sea, to Danzig. I don't want to give you too many words. I have a book here that I wrote, so if you want to buy it, then you know all the towns and everything from there. It's hard to memorize. Again, selection, but this time they told us that we will work anti-tank trenches. Boys, do you know what is an anti-tank trench? I don't see hands up. An anti-tank trench was against the Russian tanks. They were coming from Russia to East Russia, and they would meet the Allies, and that was the goal for the tanks. 1,000 women again were selected to dig 6 yards wide, 6 yards deep, like a trapeze, where the tanks would come and would jump into these anti-tank trenches. That's what, picture yourself. Would you like to dig from 7 o'clock till 7 at night against the Russian tanks? We had to do what they had told us to do. This time, again, they changed a little for some people, the one dress to something else because there were lice already. We didn't have soap. We worked with some material. We didn't have cold water. So we needed something to be alive. So they changed our dresses. I got girls a green satin dress, open up to here. I'm talking to the girls now. Open here, short, flary. I looked like, I don't tell you who. But there were no mirrors. So I didn't know really how do I look. When they took us to another place where we would dig the anti-tank trenches, there were windows, and I saw myself. It was terrible. Just picture yourself. A dress that you slept with, and it looked like, yes. I went back to my mom, and I said, Mom, look what they happened to me. Look what kind of dress I wear. How can I be? She said, don't worry, dear. Just remember, you will go in the afternoon for a nice tea or party, and you will be all different than all the others. And you will be the most beautiful. She always kept in me the hope that never left us. Maybe tomorrow will be better. Maybe tomorrow we'll have a little better soup than yesterday. That was. And she never lost her hope in God. She still prayed. She still believed that God will help. I don't know how many Jewish kids are here, but we Jews have a day of atonement when we ask forgiveness from God. And people are, after 13 years old, everybody has to fast to show God how we trust His help. And I saw that she doesn't eat her only slice of bread for lunch. And I told, Mom, why don't you eat? No, I fast. She said, where is our God? Tell me. How can He help us? She didn't care. She said, God will help. We'll get out of here. We'll tell my husband, your father, my brother, what happened to us. We didn't know what happened to them. Anyway, this lasted 5 months. 7 o'clock at night, we dug the anti-tank trenches. The Russians came anyway, and by November, it was so terrible weather already, and my mother was sick, and I said, stay home. Home means in the camp on the 10th floor. No, we have to go out. Finally, I put some hot water on her hand, coffee, and she came out. Now listen to this. 16 years old, Hitlerjugends were our guard. Not the regular black uniform Germans, no. It's 16, like I would say, I don't want to say that, what is the group of boys? Boy Scout. It cannot be compared with the Boy Scouts. They were there to hit us if we don't work fast enough. Well, Mom didn't work fast enough that day. She was sick. One came and started to beat my mother. I was in the bottom of the ditch. She was up. We are working with a shovel. And he beats her and tells, you old bag, you don't work fast, how can we win the war? And cruel kid. He was 16 years old, my age. I couldn't stand it anymore. I got out from the ditch and I faced him and I said, stop that. This woman is working from 7 o'clock in rain, in snow, with all her little food that she had. How could you do that? Don't you have a mother? This is my mother. He looked at me. He said, I have a mother, but she's German. In other words, all the other mothers should drop dead. But next day, he came back to me with a carrot in his hand and half of a cigarette. And he said, eat this carrot. You will be less hungry. Smoke this cigarette. You will be less hungry. In the carrot, there is some vitamin. That's not the fact. The fact is that he came back. So the first hope, this was in November, I hoped that if this kid changed his mind and he could change from bad to good, then maybe there are still people who would save our life, who would help us to see our parents again. That was the first sign. But this was already in November. We stayed 2 more months in this camp. We couldn't dig anymore. It was snow and freezing everything. And we heard already the Russians coming. So it was January 19th, my birthday. And we were waiting some new orders. We had a big meeting outside. And I saw my mom with a little package in her hand. Some old newspaper was the package made for. And I opened it. And you know what I found? A layer cake for my birthday. Layer cake made from 3 slices of bread that she didn't eat for 3 days. A little margarine in between, and it was that high. So I started to cry, and I said, Mom, where did you get the bread? We had only 1 slice in the morning, and if we eat it in the morning, then we don't have food till night. She said, you didn't eat it. I didn't eat it. I could eat the stone. I was so hungry all the time. She didn't eat for 3 days to make her daughter a birthday present in concentration camp. I want you to go home and kiss your mom and never say, the soup is too hot, the chicken is not done. Never complain, because they find time to be mother, even where a mother doesn't have a home. Do you feel it? Are you going to promise me that you go home and tell your mom you are the best? Promise or not? Good. But we were chosen again.
So we have maybe 6 more minutes.
Okay, then I finish. After this, we walked again till we found a place, a barn, for 150 people. And again, my language knowledge helped. They put me with my mother and a couple of people who spoke German to see what's happening next day. I overheard. One of the officers said, let's burn them. It's enough straw in the barn. Nah, the old guy, one German. No, the whole region will smell of human flesh. Another said, let's kill them with our bullets. Again, the old guy said, no way. If I have the bullets, I protect myself. So he convinced everybody that they should leave and let us in the middle of nowhere. A German guy saved our life. 3 people, I told you. We went back to sleep, and next day we woke up without guards, in the middle of nowhere. We walked home for 3 months. And you know who were those who expected us with love, with care? My Christian friends, who were my classmates before we left. They didn't know where we are. But one brought me next day my Sweet 16 velvet dress. I didn't have a normal dress, but She brought me my velvet dress. Clara, I knew you would come home whenever you were, but you will come home. Another brought my accordion. He put the accordion in the ground. The box was in shambles, but he brought the accordion to me, and I gave him that accordion 17 years later to his son, the accordion. So this went on. They helped me to recuperate my sophomore class. There were no books during the war. They had notes. My junior year, and the next year, I went to school with my former friends and colleagues. That's the end of my story of Holocaust. They helped me to hope for a better life. Unfortunately, nobody came back. From 39 members, only Mom and I, because we were together, and when she was down, I tried to make her better. If I was down, she helped me to hope again. I went to school, I got married, I have one son only, but two beautiful grandchildren. And I can say, God bless America, because I was in the communism for 17 years. They didn't want to give us visa to come to the United States. Only by helping, through friends, where I had some relatives, they helped us to come to the United States. And now I let you ask a couple of questions. I'm sorry, I can't delimit my speaking.
Thank you
Too
very
short.
much. No, it was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was so good.
Do you want to?
I sit down now. My leg.
So Clara has brought 10 books to sell here today, but I'm in room L6, and you can come to me or to Mrs. Resnick in the library, and you can order a book for $15? $15, and her book. Okay, and her book is also in the library as a library book. And we would like to allow you to ask questions if you would like. So please raise your hand and either shout really loud or I can give you the microphone. Questions? Anna. Oh, yes. What happened to your boyfriend?
My boyfriend was taken in a hospital. They called it hospital, but they didn't have anything to heal him with. I heard from somebody who returned, and he was taken to the gas chambers. He couldn't work. He never worked anything. I think he didn't know what's going on in the world anymore. And he was taken directly to the gas chambers. That we didn't know that all the others who went to the left that night when we were selected, they all went to, not to a shower like we did, but to some kind of drug that killed them right away. And then crematorium. They were burnt. Yeah. I want to tell you one more apropos this. My father and my son, they were together for 2 days. They were put to work, road work, chopping stones and making road work. And my brother did not work. And the guard came to him and he said, "What is that? What's happening with you? You don't want our road?" And my brother showed his hand. He said, "I am a pianist. If I work with these two hands chopping stones, I will never be a pianist." Naive. He was shot in front of my father the second day. My father was in Auschwitz 8 months when the Americans came and they were evacuating Auschwitz. He had a typhoid fever and died the 1st of May, and the war was ended the 10th of May. A neighbor told me the story. Okay.
How did you feel when you heard the war was over? How did
May-
she feel when she heard the war was over?
May 10th, we were already free because we arrived in the country. It was April, at the end of April. So we didn't know, is it really true that the war is over? But it was a feeling that we'll wait for my father and my brother and somebody. So we were happy just like the others. And nobody came back. Nobody. In our town, we were 5 girls from the same camp. I don't know how it happened. Only later on, after May, June, because the Russians were also who were liberating. That was not so good for women, but it was a beautiful day. It's free. Everybody will come home, we thought, May 10th. Yeah, that's the truth.
We have time for a few more questions. Did you ever revisit the concentration camps?
Yes, that's a good question. 50 years on the dot. Unfortunately, my husband died before in an accident, but I decided that I will go to face my nightmares because I still had nightmares. That was in 1994. And I saw again those barracks, not too many. I saw the big sign, Arbeit macht frei, that means the work makes you free. It was a farce. We didn't get free, never. And then it's when I decided to write my book. Because what if I went through? But we have to stop, you people, to never let this happen again. I wrote this book, that's the title. I'm still here, my mother's voice, because she was the one to write the book. You know Latin. The script stays, the words fly. And that's what I had to listen to her. I had to put in written all what had happened to us. Up to the point when I came in the United States, how was Auschwitz? That's a very good question, because for 5 years, I did not try to write or to speak about it. Then I taught French and Latin in a high school for sophomores, juniors like you. And then I realized that, what did I do till now? I didn't do anything for anybody. I had an Irish principal who heard about that I was a survivor, and he came in my class and he said, Clara, you can teach something else to our students, not only French and Latin. And then I started to think about it. And the English teacher taught my book, edited my book. Good question. Yes.
Louder. What was the first thing that came to mind when you revisited the camp?
I wanted to see my father's ruins. Where did he work? What? It was a religious Catholic holiday. I couldn't go to the place where all our books, not books, names were the Germans were very pedant with that. I wanted to see some trace where my brother was, my father was. Looked for people, and there are no people there. Looked for people. I didn't look at the big barracks where we lived. Didn't want to see them. Yeah, these are good questions. I will publish the letters that I get from the students. very soon. There are many similar. Thank you for coming to our school. We learned a lot, but there are very good statements of what he or she would do if he will be a president. He will never let to be done this. It's interesting.